I like to keep a balance in terms of price points on this channel for all hi-fi. So while I look at budget and mid-range components, I like to dabble in the high-end now and again, and that's what I'm going to be doing in this particular video, looking at an integrated amplifier from a Dutch company called Extraudio. This one is called the X250. It's a striking 150 watts into 8 ohms design, and it costs £5 short of £8,500. Arriving in a choice of black or silver, the actual chassis spans 445mm by 125 by 395mm, and it weighs in at a hefty 18 kilograms. It includes the company's own XP1 preamp inside, and also inside is a dual mono design. It uses a modified N-Core Class D power amplifier from Hypex, but this, I repeat, is a modified version. It is not an off-the-shelf model. The company says that it has injected Class A sonic elements into the design, which is why it describes the sound of the X250 as Class AD. It also contains 2 transformers, one for the preamp and one for the output. There's a range of quality components in the chassis too, including Sprague tantalum, Janssen Superior Z and Elner capacitors. And yet its bulk is not accompanied by fuss. The front fascia is clean, the styling is simple, and even the feature-packed rear, with one exception, and we'll get to that in a second, is well laid out and spacious in arrangement. On that front fascia there are 2 dominant control knobs. The left controls the source, and I'll let you take a little look at the image to check out those sources for yourself. They're all lifted on the right. The active source switches on an adjacent light. On the far right is another knob, and that's the gain control. The power switch is front and center and is in the shape of the company logo. A nice touch. The rear offers 4 single-ended inputs and a single set of balanced inputs with an additional set of balanced connectors called in-processor. The in-processor connections are for AV use, and this enables the X250 to be an AV power amplifier. Take another look at the front fascia image here and run your eyes to the left, and you'll notice an indicator for a phono amplifier. That wasn't part of my review sample, I'm afraid. Purchased at £525, this moving magnet, moving coil unit can be fitted by your dealer as a separate module. Now, if you do install the phono amplifier, if you look around the back, you'll see the grub screw for the ground connection. To me, it's in the wrong place because the phono connections are far left. The grub screw is on the right of that little cluster of sockets, and I think it's going to get in the way of other sockets. It's going to be over and above and crossing the other interconnect cables. So I'm not sure about the placement on that. It's not a massive issue, but I just thought I'd mention it anyway. You'll find a compact, sturdy remote control that handles volume, power and mute. It features an internally fitted 1800 mAh lithium battery and can be charged via mini USB. Intriguingly, it is constructed using a RF coil, which you can just see through the translucent window at the top of the remote. It actually looks like a typical spring, and the remote works fine, but when you put it down on the table, because that little spring is there, it makes a disconcerting boing type of noise. Hope you like the sound effect, but it does. You put it down on the table and it's boing, and it's very odd, but it works fine. It works fine. The design layout is a little bit strange in that it's rather minimal, and I think it's more designed over substance in terms of the interface, because the buttons for me are just a tad too small. Also, there's no button there for, or buttons there for the source. Now I would have liked to have seen a button or a series of buttons for the source, and we're going to get to that in a second, but I think that needs to be looked at by the company if they're ever planning a version 2 of this remote control. Now the little niggles I've mentioned so far are just that really, they're just little niggles. I wouldn't say they're major issues. There is another little niggle which is slightly more intrusive. No, I wouldn't say it's it's a major thing, but it's something to be careful about, and it's the weight. When you turn on the amplifier, there's a period of warm-up and you just have to leave it just to sort of consider life and the universe and everything, and then it'll wake up and then you can use your amp. Now this is fine, it's not a big deal, and I have a preamp which does exactly the same thing, so I'm quite used to that initial wait. When you mute and unmute the amplifier, again there's a little wait while it's doing that, and again that's not a big deal, and it's a sort of safety feature, I suppose. The amplifier is making sure all its ducts are in line before it allows you to proceed, and that's a good thing. The waiting game can be slightly more intrusive when you select a couple of the sources, and those sources are XLR and in processing, and if you do select them, the amplifier is unusable for long seconds at a time. Let me explain. The sources are selected in a serial fashion. So if you look at the image here of the front fascia, let's say you want to select the tuner source option. You have to run through the phono and the CD first to get there. You can't go straight to tuner. You have to go through phono and then CD first. If you're in the auxiliary and you want to select phono, you have to run through the tuner and CD to reach it. You can't just jump there. You have to go through in a straight line, as it were. Now, this shouldn't really be a problem, but the issue is if you hit in processing and also balanced, there are long waits while both of these sources are put in order, as it were, by the amplifier. It runs through a sort of protection mode, carefully muting and waking up these options before the audio can be heard. But if you accidentally spin the source selector and it hits in processing by mistake, and you only really wanted to select auxiliary in the first place, to get back to auxiliary you have to wait 40 seconds as the in processing option is selected. Then there's another 60 to 70 seconds if you go to the balanced source, and that's next in line. Only then will you be able to move to auxiliary. Of course, if the remote featured individual source buttons, then none of this would be an issue. So be careful when selecting the source. Now again, it's a niggly thing, and if you do happen to demo this amplifier and you love the sound, then that's way more important, far more important. So it's just a niggly interface thing. I did talk to the company. They did say they were going to look at reducing those delays, those wait periods. So maybe, hopefully, by the time, if you ever do want to buy this amplifier, by the time that occurs, hopefully those waits will have reduced and what I've just said will be totally irrelevant because it'll be fixed. Hopefully that's the case. For sound tests, I began with an original pressing and the title track from Roxy Music's Avalon, and ran my turntable and phono amp through the single-ended inputs. The resultant sound was rather lovely, actually. Yes, compared to more expensive amplifier setups still, the upper mids didn't range as far, the dynamic reach didn't push to the nth degree, but look, I'm being rather churlish here by comparing this box to amplifier setups almost double the price. The fact that I'm even tempted to do that, though, says a lot for this amplifier design. The fact that I'm not even looking at direct competition. The fact that I'm getting into nitpicking territory here with amplifiers thousands of pounds more expensive than the X250. The fact is that this is a beautiful sounding amplifier and no mistake. And what really grabs you when you listen to this amplifier is the mid-range, The mid-range is just sublime. It's absolutely beautiful because the X250 lowers the noise floor and detail just floods in. It really does. Even a few more expensive amplifiers I've heard would struggle to compete with the X250 in terms of pure mid-range performance. There's a gentle, quite shy, introverted synth line that insinuates itself into the early part of this Roxy Music track, and it sounds very nice on top quality amplifiers, as you'd expect. Via the X250 though, this synth line adds a bunch of extra textures and nuanced information that made my head turn to its resident right channel. Eyebrows were raised, let me tell you. There's a neutrality and balanced presentation from the X250 that is just a relief to hear. I've heard a fair few high-end amplifiers in the past that promise so much, tempt you with outstanding aesthetics and feature sets, then hit you over the head with a crowbar made from harsh, solid-state sonics that have you running for your earplugs and a stiff drink. Not here. The X250 eased itself into my listening room. Imagine, if you will, a Victorian gentleman, effusive with good manners, firm yet non-aggressive, mysterious yet open-faced, venturing, emboldened to accompany the dear lady to dance towards the delicate tones of Strauss. That's what the X250 is. The X250 is that Victorian gentleman of hi-fi. It beguiles the ear, it captivates and enchants. As that Victorian lady really cannot refuse such an offer, neither can your attention be diverted from the cultured and even-toned presentation of the X250. All sonic frequencies are disciplined, bass is firm, yet never accentuates, and adds a nicely weighty twang to electric guitars. Mid-range is open and detailed, the treble is feather light, and the noise floor is pushed way down. Ella Fitzgerald's Blues in the Night was next, from the Harold Arlen songbook, and this revealed its nicely remastered demeanour, as I had to increase the gain. The low noise aspect of the recording accentuated the effective big cymbal taps with lots of attendant reverb. Fitzgerald's lead vocal was simple, pure, clean and open in its delivery, while rather hidden instruments like the gently strummed guitar was picked out from the rear of the soundstage. Meanwhile, the brass section was detailed and focused, adding a fascinating suite of contrasting textures. I then turned to CD and Leo Cocky with a bit of guitar picking and the song I Yell at Traffic from the album Regards from Chuck Pink, and I was very impressed indeed, impressed with the neutrality of the presentation. Yes, there was a slight bunching up the top around the edge of the upper mids, but I'm being picky again, mainly because there was nothing here to cause undue alarm. Instead, I was impressed by the complexity of the guitar and the weighty resonance exhibited by the body of the thing, the accuracy and the personality around the mid-range and the focus in the treble. I also liked how the frequencies integrated with each other. There was an easy flow to this music, as if the whole thing was interlocked, meshed together, each frequency being part of a team, instead of desperately trying to be the star of the show. Now I began to think to myself, well, hooray for single-ended mode, but what about balanced mode? So, keeping the CD in place, I switched the cables to balanced mode, and here's what I heard. In short, this is a rock-only connection. If you're looking at precision from my guitar picker friend, or from jazz, then the balanced connection provided too much bass warmth and a rolled off upper mid-range that really killed dynamics, producing an overly safe presentation. It really flattened the sound. There was less life here, less sparkle, and too much cotton wool that damped detail. Now, if you push rock through the balanced connection, then you'd better hide behind the sofa, because this is where the Victorian gentleman turns into a Viking berserker. It offers big bass with heft and weight and power to spare. Unruly, chaotic music does rather well through the balanced connections. Accuracy is not treated so well. But look, I don't see this issue as a real problem because there's only one set of balanced inputs on the back, and that could be ideal if your rock collection is on CD, for example, and your CD player offers balanced connections. But balanced is not where this amplifier is at. Balanced sockets are almost a bonus feature rather than the heart of the system. The majority of the inputs are single-ended, and that's the variant of user who needs to take a serious look at the X250. So what do I think of the Extraudio X250? Well, this is an amplifier that offers simple yet stylish aesthetics. It offers a wonderful single-ended performance with no musical barbs or bumps in the road. It provides an easy-going flow to the mid-range, especially matched with the tremendous insight. And this makes the X250 a very easy amplifier to live with. If this amp ever asks me for the next dance, I'll be pulling up my skirts for a quick waltz, let me tell you. And that's me done, folks. I hope the odd bang or twang or hammer you may have heard in the background, I've still got those workmen in, by the way. I hope that didn't harm your enjoyment at all. Thank you very much for sticking with me to the end of the video. I really do appreciate it. Check out the description box below for a whole host of links, social media, my Facebook group. There's a Patreon page with exclusive editorial on there you won't see anywhere else. If you want to see the reference system that I used to review this amplifier, that's also in the description box. And something I don't say often enough, but I will now, if you're looking at the rear, the vinyl wall as I call it, and you're saying to yourself, what's that one? By all means ask and I'll let you know. I try and keep it varied just to keep the interest going, and I know some people like to vinyl spot. I do, that's why I do it in the first place. Anyway, thank you very much for watching the video. Hopefully you'll join me on the next one. Until then, bye bye for now.